Alright, I'm working on a 2013 Lincoln MKS here today with the 3.7 liter V6, and we're going to be replacing the water pump. And as you know, it's pretty extensive because it's behind the time and cover. It was leaking out pretty good out of the weep hole. I'll show you that when I'm able to here to kind of show you. It's kind of hard to see, but basically it's pouring out of there. Already checked the oil, so the oil does not have any coolant in it, so that is a good sign. So we're just basically going to go ahead and get started. I've got the wheels chalked, and probably just going to we'll get up here and I'll show you where this weep hole is maybe. Okay, and before you start working on this, see I already got the little cover, foam cover off of there. Take this to the car wash or something and clean your engine really good. This thing was really nasty, and I have cleaned it off. Cleaned it on the top, cleaned it underneath. I disconnected the negative, covered up the fuse box over there with some plastic. Cleaned this really good. It didn't hurt a thing. You know, make sure it's cooled off a little bit, preferably, before you go to spray and everything. But take the time to clean it up a little bit. It's going to make it a lot easier when you go to removing things. You don't have to worry about getting debris and stuff in the engine. Okay, so when you get a leak from this pump, more than likely what you're going to see is coolant dripping underneath the oil pan, and it kind of almost looks like it's coming from the oil pan, so to speak. It looks like it's coming behind this alternator. You can see right here, but it's impossible to show you from here, but I will show you eventually where that's located. But you're going to see it like kind of coming from behind that alternator, but it's going to run down to the oil pan and start running underneath, and you're going to see it all down there. So anyways, the way I think that I'm going to be tackling this, because the radiator I think is where the problem may have started. And then it got low on coolant and the pump went, and then the coolant just started pouring out. But I think I'm going to go ahead and start draining the coolant, and we're going to take this front off here. It's going to make it much easier for me to get in here and get to some of these things. So I think I'm going to start there, just to make it easier on me to show you stuff and to get this bumper kind of just out of my way. Okay, first thing up, we've got a 19. We're going to go ahead and break the lugs loose on this passenger side, and then we'll go ahead and get the vehicle lifted up and finish removing this wheel. Okay, this is my lift point up here in the front where this body mount or the subframe bolt goes through here. Now you could lift right here on this part of the subframe. That's where I got a hood. I've got a wooden block there, you'll notice. Lifted it up enough to get the tire up, and I went ahead. We've got a jack placed here at the control arm and some blocks here at the pinch weld for just some backup. And we also have the rear wheels chalked. Okay, we'll go ahead and get this wheel off here. Okay, once in here you'll see we got these little small screws here. I think those are 1/4 inch, I'm not sure, I'll find out. But we also have some various snaps and stuff to remove, and we're going to take this inner fender liner, just take it completely out. See, on this side we have the snaps, and we have some little screw snaps. We're just going to take all those out, take this out of here. Okay, for these, either a 5.5 millimeter or a 7/32 will get the job done. I'm just going to take those out. Okay, and I'd recommend all these screws you take out, put them in a little container, Ziploc bag, something so you're not losing. I realized upon further inspection these aren't even screwed into anything, so I don't have to take those loose. Okay, so I'm on this side, taking these out. And I usually just throw them in a bag, and then I'll throw them like in the passenger side door, the door that they come out of. Okay, and then it's got some of these little Phillips screw tops. Now I doubt that these are the original, but who knows. There's just an assortment of everything on here. So it's got a few more. Okay, and then it'll all come down, and we just toss that out of the way. Now I'm probably going to do the same thing on the other side. I don't really need to, but just to make it easy, probably just going to take it out. Okay, now you can see once we get this fender flap out of the way, we can easily get in here and get to things like we got our fog lights and stuff we can disconnect. We got these tins. This is what's actually bolting the bumper on here and going through here. So we're going to work on taking these out, and then we'll free up this and we'll move on. Now, depending on what's been knocked loose and everything, you may have a few up underneath to remove, but I was looking at this one, I didn't see any, so either they've been previously removed or knocked loose or whatever. Okay, as you can see, these are very easy to get at. We're just going to take those completely off. Okay, we got a little bit of a situation because this has been wrecked. This has actually been glued in here somehow. So you'd normally be able to just pop this out, and that's what's kind of making problems for me. So I'm going to work on it here a minute. What I'm going to do next is come up here. Got 3 of these. This piece is broken too, but I can pull this out of here, and I'm going to figure out how exactly I can get a hold of this headlight. I see we got a bolt here and here. Well, no, down here. I'm going to work on this and see if there's any way of getting this without having to take that glue loose here. Okay, so essentially the glue is working fine and dandy here, but what I did is took those bolts loose and had to actually cut that excess loose there to get it to turn loose. And now we've got it loose here. We've got this loose from up here. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. I believe it's glued over there as well. Okay, so we're just getting ready to lift this side. I'm lifting right here, what I was talking about. I've got a relief cut in that so it's not cracking my board, but basically we're just going to lift it up just like we did the other side, and we're going to get some blocks and jack stands. Okay, this thing took a pretty good hit in the front here. Actually looks like it even got the condenser, but surprisingly the air and everything's still working. So I would suspect it got the radiator to leaking, then it got low, and then the water pump went next. So this is the only thing I'm disconnecting over here. It's one connector, but boy, it really sticks. So I'm just going to get this what's left of this bumper out of the way here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take the headlights out. We don't need them in the way. So we got the couple tins here. We got one more over here on the side. Okay, so we just got this 13, and then we just got to get the wire clip in the back, and we'll set this aside. Okay, so we should be able to push down. And we'll just do the same on the other side. Next up, this piece, we've got a couple of these 8s holding it here. On each side, you'll need to pop out these little snaps. Okay, and we just go ahead and take this off. Looks like we got a wire on it here. I don't know the purpose of this, but whatever it was, it's all broken up. We're going to take this brace out here. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, and 4 of these 13s. I know it's been up, but I'm going to get them out anyway. Okay, on top of unbolting this, you're going to have to drill through these tack welds. You got one here. This one I just cut off, but this one I drilled through. You're going to need a good carbide drill or you will not get through those tack welds. Okay, you can see how I'm drilling through there, and then I can usually just take a chisel and a hammer and just finish knocking it. Okay, with that piece out of the way, we're going to focus on draining this coolant here next. Okay, we got our pan there. We got a 3/4 we're up in here using. You can see we're just on that spout right over here on the driver's side. Go ahead and crack that loose. Alright, so we got it draining now. We get all this coolant out. We're going to work on getting the radiator out here next. Okay, next thing we're going to focus on removing this condenser. Okay, you got to get a 10mm. Let's take that completely out. There's that one. Okay, same thing, we got this one right in here we got to get at. Okay, this is actually an 8mm. Okay, so just got my 8mm ratchet wrench. We'll just take this in here out. It's not real easy to get to, but you can get in here with this and get it. There's that one. Okay, so we got both the top bolts out. If you look down here, it slides into these little slots here, so we have to lift it up to get it loose from there. We're going to do that on both sides. Okay, now this condenser is all wrapped around this plastic piece, but I'm not going to let it stop me from removing it because I'm going to need to pull it down and out of the way. And if I have to move the whole plastic piece, then so be it. We'll start with these 13s right here. Now we got those there out. Okay, now we'll focus on these two on this side. Okay, so we got a couple more up top, one on each side, but we've got some other stuff we need to remove. I'm going to start with this little air box. Got 2 8s here. Okay, with those two out, we've got a couple of these tins on each side that are locking this radiator down. Take these out. And it just has the other part on the other side slides over the top of it. I need to remove this. I need the 8mm. Got 2 8mm. I need to get this cable loose. We'll get this loose. We can flip it over and take that cable loose, and we can just stick this back. Okay, so we got it flipped over. I'm going to pop these little tabs in and push it back. May need a screwdriver. Okay, so you can push that in, push the one on the bottom, and it should push through once you get it. Once you get the tabs pushed in, and you can just pull that right through and then flip it right up, and we can take that right off there just like that. So now we can feed that back through, and we can stick this right back on here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start popping these hoses loose. Now there's going to be some wires attached to this thing as well as the fan, so we're going to have to get a hold of those and pop those loose. If you get this just right, it'll lock itself, but Let's see if we can wiggle this off of here. Alright, so there's the upper. Okay, so we're going to start popping these wires loose wherever they're connected to this piece and the fan. Okay, got all the wires I can reach loose. I'm going to try and get the hose. Actually, I think I'm going to have to switch gears here in a minute. I'm going to get this air box out of here. That way I can get that hose easier on that other side. So I'm just going to take this loose and kind of hold tight a minute. So just realize something. Okay, we'll start with this band here. I'm going to reach over here and pop that loose. This has a red safety lock. You're going to pull that back and you squeeze. You got to pull that safety lock back that far and you just squeeze right there. Okay, we should be able to start lifting this up. Just give that a tug. This is going to pop up and out of here. Okay, you can see we got the whole entire air box cleared out of the way. Okay, we're going to go ahead and disconnect our negative. Okay, and here's a good example of how dirty this was. This is the only spot I couldn't get to. The air box is in here. You can see the difference of the rest of the engine compared to this. Okay, so it's easier to disconnect up here. So we're going to take it loose right here. And if it's stuck, you're just going to have to work with it till you can get it broke loose. So we've got the radiator hoses freed up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this side loose. Hopefully, so I've got all the wires loose. Hopefully we'll be able to get this radiator out of here a little bit easier with this shroud and condenser kind of pulled down out of the way. Okay, I just got it pulled back a little bit. It's going to be easier to lift that radiator up out of there. I've got some more coolant dripping, so I'm just waiting on that, and of course that'll lighten up the load. And this is the routing of this cable. It runs right through here, so we'll put that back. Okay, so I'm just getting ready to pull the radiator up and out of here now. The hoses are loose, so I went ahead and just took that one out of the way. The wires are all unclipped. There are more wires clipped to this thing than anything. We were getting ready to lift it up, that bottom hose and all. Kind of got this just pulled forward here, just kind of hanging there. Okay, now here's one of your fan connectors. I just went down with a screwdriver and pushed there. You got one over here, and then you got one down over here. I just went down with a screwdriver and unclipped them, but just kind of got it set in here at the moment. Okay, we can move this a little bit, not a whole lot. We've got the hood switch right here. We're getting ready just to pop that connector right there loose. Oh yeah, you see we got that out of the way nicely. We just kind of got it tucked down here. So this is going to really help out. And so let me see if I can get in here and show you. Really still can't show you because it's really so hard to see. I'm going to be taking that alternator off though, and I'll show you. I'll just go ahead and do that I think next, so I can show you where that little weep hole is. But This is definitely going to save your back, taking this front stuff off. I mean, you're working around so much more. You can get in here so much easier to get to things. We are going to have to make sure that we got the engine supported and everything before we go to taking this mount and stuff loose, but we're probably just going to get started, you know, getting our valve covers out of the way and just kind of going from there. Hopefully some of this stuff will be good. I don't know if the intakes and valve cover gaskets have been done, but we'll find out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get this alternator off. We got the wire clipped there, and we got this here loose. I think that was a 13, and I've got a couple of bolts over here we got to get loose now. I went ahead and got on the tensioner over here and popped the belt off right here. It's really easy to get to. Okay, so here's the tensioner here, and here's the top bolt, or nut rather, for that, and that's a 15 millimeter. We got one more down here on the bottom. We'll go ahead and work on this top one. Okay, there is the 15 down on the bottom. Go ahead and get that out of there. So I really wish I could have got this whole front support out of the way, but the system has Freon in it, and I do not want to disturb it. So here is that big long bolt. Okay, with those bolts out, this thing's not just going to come right out for us. We're going to have to get a little pry bar and push at the bottom here. Start working this out. Alright, so there we got it loose. Now we should be able to slide it. There we go. Now, let me get this out of the way. Okay, we'll just bring it right back through this way. Now you can see that it's setting on there. You have to break it loose with a pry bar or something. It won't come off very easily. Okay, so this right here is the weep hole in question, and like I said, it's almost impossible to even see it from under the car. But you see how it's running down the side of that engine. It almost looks like it's like coming out of the oil pan or something when you're underneath. But that is where it seeps out at. When you see that, it's definitely not a good day. Okay, let me see if I can get in there a little better. See, it's just a little tiny hole. But the way that it works, if the pump starts failing and seeping out, it's made to come out here and not go into the oil, unless the front of the pump fails, and then it could wind up, there's, you know, a chance of that happening. But that is where it's coming out of, and we're going to go ahead. I just wanted to show you that, and we're going to go ahead and start working on taking these valve covers and working from up here, I think. Okay, I've started with this hose running from this overflow tank, and I'm just popping it out of here. Okay, we're going to work on this overflow. You just want to pop this little connector right here. Pop that out. I'm going to have to get a screwdriver. It never wants to work when I want it to. But we're going to take a 8mm. I'm going to go down here, get these little bolts. And we got one more over here. We'll just leave that hose attached there. We don't need to remove that. We just need that tank out of our way. So I'm going to go get me a pick tool and get that loose. Okay, so I just popped that loose and where we can get the tank off there, and just be careful and don't bend your tube there. Okay, now right down here, it's got a quick connect. Just squeeze those tabs and pop that part right loose. Okay, so now we just got to lift this up. It's kind of been a little notch there. And with any luck, we can rotate this around and figure out how to get it out of here. And there goes some more coolant. Ain't that lovely? Okay, so that clears up quite a bit of room. I think the next thing I'm going to do is get this windshield washer bottle over here. That's all but certain to get in the way. I'm going to get that completely off. And then I'll maybe focus on these valve covers and intake and stuff here. Okay, now you do have to take the time to label a few of these things as you go, and you do want to take the time to put your bolts and stuff back where they go. Okay, so there's that 8mm. We're going over here to get this 10mm. Actually, this is not a 10. Okay, hold on. Okay, it's an 11 actually. Not used to ever using an 11. So I'm going to get this nut off here, and we got one more down there, for it's a little bit lower. Okay, there's that. Okay, now I'm just getting this one down here at the bottom. Okay, another thing, if you take your hose loose here, all of your windshield washer fluid will leak out. So I'll show you where I took it loose. Okay, so this hose just runs around, has some clips, runs right up here and connects, and then it kind of hooks to the bottle. So we're going to leave it on the bottle, and we're just going to go ahead and remove this. And now that won't be in the way. Okay, so we'll just start with these cool packs. These are not new, but they look clean. I just cleaned it really good. So go ahead and get these screws out. Okay, we've got those through. Okay, we got to push our locks back. Back far enough, maybe too far. Okay, well I guess I'm going to fight with these a minute. Okay, well the key is getting it back far enough without breaking it, and that one's a little bit too far with it. And sometimes it still doesn't want to release. There it goes. Guys, I'm going to disconnect this breather. Just push that. And don't be surprised if these aren't stuck in here. You don't want to get too rough with it, but go ahead and get all those out. Okay, we'll go ahead and get this O2 off of here. We can start pulling some of this up and off of here. You see, starting to see like how having the front makes things much easier, at least when you get to a lot of this. This front valve cover is not very pleasant to get to. Okay, sometimes these are difficult to get to turn loose. Okay, so we got that wire harness free. We can just kind of drop that down out of the way now. We got our variable time solenoids over here. We got to get these little locks pulled up on these. Again, you got to be careful with any of these locks. Okay, I had to go through several tools. I found that the pick tool works good for these. And it's a good idea, I said the label, you don't want to get stuff mixed up when you put it back together. Okay, more wire clips. Okay, and we have more wire clips, and then running down to our oil sensor. Okay, so more wire clip downs up here we got to pull off, and then we got to work our safety lock back on our injectors. We'll go ahead and get those off there next. Now this little hooked pick tool works quite well. I'm just pushing on those tabs. Now we just got to get these off. These things really stick. Okay, so finally got all the wire connector loose from the valve cover here, and we'll have more stuff to remove when we get to the intake. I've got a ground over here that I'm going to get out, and I've learned to use an impact on that one because for some reason it does not want to budge. But we've got everything freed up on this valve cover, so we'll get back on in the daylight. Okay, we're starting to take these 10 millimeters here loose. You want a deep There's another clip down here that I missed. We got this wire. We'll go ahead and disconnect that. Okay, once you get all of these loosened, it's going to be completely stuck. Usually I like to start with my rubber mallet. Start tapping it so we can kind of break that seal loose. Okay, so, and just to explain, not only do you have the valve cover gasket that's stuck to the head, but you have these seals that are going around these variable solenoids. You got these that are going around your spark plug tubes, and it's sticking to all these. So you don't want to just hit it too hard. I like to just tap it because you could go to bending and possibly break the valve cover, but I started there. It's not moving, so I'm going to get my putty knife and start working one end, see if we can get it worked up loose. Okay, so we're just going to take and get under here, see if we can get a hold of something. Okay, and once you can kind of work that corner in, usually you can kind of work it along but until you can get the seal broke loose, it's not going anywhere, and you may have to just go completely around the whole thing. Okay, so I managed to get this area loose right here. I'm going to come over here. It's like a tab, plastic tab. I'm going to get it like on the cylinder head here, not hitting the sensor, and just start working. You can see now we're actually able to move it a little bit. And once you're able to move it, usually you can just go ahead and break it the rest of the way loose. Okay, so I got this end pried up, just got a screwdriver under there, and I'm just going to gently work my way along, just being gentle, because you don't want to mess up the face of the cylinder head here. And just to show you, I've got it up enough here. I'm putting this screwdriver down here, I can get this under here. I think it's mainly holding on these and these at this point. And if you thought this would come off easy, you'd be wrong. So we're going to have to do the same thing on the back one, but it's even harder to get to. We got this loose. Gasket really doesn't seem too bad. Okay, so here's a look at all that. And now you can start to see right here where they got this. This is where the front cover is actually joining up. Now I think the next thing we're going to get on is that upper intake. I don't think we're going to need to get to mess with the lower, but we'll see. Okay, we got some wires running up here. There's one right down here on this cam. We're going to go ahead and disconnect that and label it. And as we run up here, we got a clip, and then we've got a few wires and connectors here that we need to get as well and label. Okay, we're going to get this safety lock. So you see, just pull that back and press down hard right there. Okay, this hose you got to squeeze in and push, or kind of pull from the other side rather, but you got to get both of these tabs like that, and we got to push it up all the way and just give that a tug. Okay, that hose is running to the back of the intake. We need to disconnect one of these, so just whichever one you can get to the easiest. Okay, so I took that black clamp. Now you'll just take a long screwdriver. Okay, with everything loose, we've got an 8mm Okay, when you get the bolts free, you're going to think that it's still got a bolt hanging up, but it's just stuck. Kind of like everything else. Okay, I think this is kind of coming back to me. If you come down here below this throttle body and you zoom back in here, yeah, I can't even get a look at it. But anyways, there is a, right there, you know, what better place to put it than back where you can't get to it. But anyways, I got to get in there with a an extension and get that out. Okay, as you see, it helps to have an extension to go back in there with, so you can just get to it. And don't be surprised if you don't drop it in the midst of doing this, but take a magnet, sometimes it helps. Okay, so I got that last little bolt out with a magnet, and it's equally as fun to put back. Okay, so as you can see now it's ready to come up, but definitely don't miss that bolt. Right, we're going to go ahead and cover this up so we don't have any mishaps. See, I cleaned this really good, but you just can't get to certain areas. Probably going to take some air and try to get all the loose stuff at least off there, so when I go to taking that valve cover off. But anyways, we've got some more wires. We're going to take those off same way we did the others, and we got to get the injectors loose like the others. Our variable timing solenoids, got to get those loose, and basically we're just going to run around here and unclip this harness, and then we're going to work on getting that valve cover there. Alright, so we're going to see how many of these we can break. This pick tool has been working out the best. So it's not quite back far enough. Alright, this one here is not wanting to. You get all this dirt and stuff in them, and they're really tough sometimes, and it's all but certain to snap and break when you got all the heat and stuff. Okay, we'll break these loose. Okay, so I'm getting close to getting all these wires out of the way. We basically did just like we did on the front, getting the ejectors and the coil packs. There is a wire that runs down here that you got to reach down here and hook that O2 sensor. So you got to just squeeze on it. There's no safety lock, and you just pop that loose. It's down there on the below the valve cover. So getting ready to take these grounds here loose. Got one here and got one right here, and we should be able to get this wiring over and out of the way finally. Had to pop that clip out right there as well. Okay, and we get this ground. Okay, as you can see, we got the wire freed up. We popped it off the back, and we've got everything freed up here now. We're just going to go ahead and start taking out our 10 millimeters. Okay, so these front ones should be pretty easy, but I'm going to have to use a wrench on the lower one. Okay, so I'm just getting these in the back here. Just a little more difficult than the front one. You can't really see and you have to kind of feel, but it's not too bad. It's actually better than I thought it was going to be. And we'll have to do the same like we did with the front. We'll have to kind of use our putty knife to break it loose before we can get this thing to pop up. Okay, I went ahead and twisted that PCV valve out. Just took a pair of pliers and got that. Okay, this rear valve cover gasket acts like it's going to come loose a little easier. You see this tab here. I've got my pry bar just on top of this motor mount and it's kind of pulling up. I actually got it already loose, so I'm just going to keep working with it here. Okay, so I'm working one end at a time. I'm kind of like pushing up on this end and going to the other, and this one's really stuck too. Okay, so we finally got it broke loose. It's really unreal how these things will glue themselves. But the seals are actually working good, but it's just impossible to get it off without ruining your seal, because it's got to be pried up so much. Okay, so here's a view of our rear. Not too bad to get to, it's just stuck unbelievably. Even worse than the front. So anyways, we got that off. We're going to have to work on the front cover now. So we're going to have to get this engine supported. And we want to get some blocks where if we have to get in here with a jack and lift it up and down, we can do so. So we want to give ourselves room as well. Okay, so I just positioned the jack here where I can get a hold of it and lift it up and down if I have to. And I got some blocks right there, and those are supporting the engine at this point. I just lifted it up a little bit off of the mount and they're setting on those blocks. So that's going to support it. I'm going to keep the jack here for a moment, see if I'm going to need to lift this up and down any. But I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to go ahead and pop the mount loose up there, and then we may start working on the crank pulley and stuff from down here. Okay, we're going to start with these two 13s. We got a nut here. We'll get that off, and then we're going to go ahead at the same time and remove this bolt. Okay, so we got that. Let's take that little brace off. Okay, now we're going to get on these 15 millimeters. We got these 4 15 millimeters. Go ahead and take those out. Okay, now we got 3 of these 18 millimeters. Okay, so they definitely use plenty of Loctite on these. For whatever reason, they were tough getting out of there. So this frees up the tire mount. So it won't give us any trouble. So we'll go ahead and get this out. Okay, so that clears up quite a bit of room. I'm starting to feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel here. We're going to go down below, I think, and get the crank off next. I'm pretty positive that our AC compressor is going to have to be removed. Anything that's attached to this front cover that's going to hinder us from popping it off. And I will tell you, I'm not 100% sure on this one, but a lot of times they like to put these locating pegs. So if you go to just trying to pry it off and it catches on one of those pegs for whatever reason, you can break it. So you got to be cautious. And it's going to be, you know, glued RTV, so it's going to have to basically be worked loose. Okay, so we're just getting ready to get this bolt out, and you're going to need an 18 for that. Okay, I had to bring out the big impact for this one because I don't want any trouble. Alright, so there's that. Okay, so you need to get yourself one of these. We're going to get this set up. This is our puller. We're going to get this. Notice it's got a hole there. We're going to put one of these bars in there, whichever length we need. We're going to get this threaded into here and get it set up. And we'll figure out the appropriate bar that we need to go up in there. Okay, here we are with it set up, and you see how we wound up going with the middle bar for this. And I'm going to show you a little closer look here. So you see how the legs are setting underneath that part of that pulley, and it's made for those just to go, just slide it right on there. And you just want to make sure that they're locked underneath before you go to tightening it. And we just basically got the little bar. See the bars going in there. It seats inside the bolt, and then we just thread the bolt in. So we're just going to go ahead and start tightening this, and it'll pull it right off. Okay, so we'll start snugging it up. Now, at one time you could get these pullers at part stores and stuff. I don't know who carries them now. I used to could get one at AutoZone as a loaner tool. I think no, Advance Auto Parts has a lot of loaner tools as well. But if you can't get your hands on one quick, you can always go with the loaner tool. But it's a really handy tool to have. They're not that expensive. I think you can get one for maybe $30. It may be a little more. It's been a while since I bought this, but I find myself using it a lot. And it's really a heavy duty. You really need something like this to pull these pressed on cranks pulleys off. So without this, it's not going to be as easy of a task for sure. But it's getting a lot easier. So I can tell I'm making some progress here. Now I could put my impact on here, but just for demonstration purposes, we're going to do it this way. But I use this thing all the time. So I bought one after the first couple times that I got a loaner tool. I went ahead and just got one. Alright, you can see how it's kind of shaking there a little bit now. It's coming loose. And we want to make sure that we got clearance here, and we do. I can tell we're almost about there. But you notice it's not even trying to turn the crank or anything as we're doing this. It's not really that hard to remove. Alright, we just got a little bit more, I guess. Alright, here we go. Catch my tool. You can see those. That's where you kind of get it on there and slide it under those. How those cranks are made. This oil smells awful as I'm taking this out. Until it's like really old, nasty oil. There we are. Okay, now because this one doesn't have a keyway, do go ahead and put you a mark on there and there so you put it back on exactly right. I didn't realize it wasn't keyed, but I know the location it was in before I took it off, and so I just put a mark there so we can put it back the same. Okay, another thing that I discovered is there's like a little keyway indention. Let me see if I can get in this thing. You see that indention? From here it looks like it's not lined up with my mark here, but it is. And it left a little oil indention on the back side of that crank pulley. So when I put me a mark here in line with that and transferred it to the front of the pulley and put it back on there, and I'd actually eyeballed it almost exact, and it lined up with this mark here. So I know that whatever the case, I'm going to put it back on there exactly the way that it was. It kind of threw me because I was thinking it was going to have a keyway, but it didn't. But make sure to mark it before you take that off. We'll be replacing this seal here more than likely. It doesn't look like it's been leaking, but it's got 160,000, so we'll probably replace that. They're like $10. Okay, so we're going to start zipping all these tins off, everything that we can get to from down here. And I won't be able to get them all in my impact. Get the ones that I can get. Okay, so we got the first 7 bolts. There's one hiding up there under the tensioner. So there's those. Okay, so I'm getting this one up under this tensioner. Probably going to be taking that tensioner off. I don't know. It just depends on if it's going to, how much in the way it's going to be. I don't think that the AC compressor is going to be a problem. We're just going to finish getting that one out. Okay, I'm just working my way up on this side, and I've got a little ratchet here, and I'm going to fix to go back up top and get the rest of them up there. And that little tensioner, I wanted to get the 8mm out because it's right over the top of another 10mm bolt, so we're going to remove that as well. Okay, now I was talking about locating pegs. I believe this is one right here. So you got to be careful when getting this off because it'll catch on those as well and want to hang up, and you could break it. Okay, so I'm working on getting this tensioner off. Got my 8mm. Okay. Doesn't like to cooperate when it gets at a weird angle. These are very easy to get loose. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get that out of the way, and you can see that one right here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get this 10. These are really tight. So we're going to get this and we'll switch over to that other side. Okay, so over here on this side we've got like 3 of them. It's difficult to see from this angle, but there's one like right here, and there's a couple more up there. You can't, it's kind of hard to see. Okay, I wanted to explain something on this one back here. It's going to be your hardest one. I was using a slim ratchet. You can see where I've got a wrench 10mm on there. I'm finishing it with that. But I had to come from under here to get it. And we'll just show you those 2 10mm. And the difficult one is the very top one because there's not a lot of clearance there. and they put it just terribly tight. All these have been so ridiculous tight that it's unreal. So I had to take these loose from under here because I couldn't get it from the top, and then I'm just working the rest of the way off there. So fix to get those out, and then we'll move on. Okay, down here in the center of the front cover, we got a 15mm there. So these have all been really tight. I'm assuming this is going to be a really long bolt. Hopefully I got clearance here. I may switch over to a ratchet wrench here in just a second. Okay, here we go. Okay, so far as I can tell, we've only got some tins up here in the center, and then we got a fuel line that's got a bracket, and other than that, we're going to take our putty knife and start working this loose. It's got RTV all around it, gluing it. It's going to take some work to get it loose, to say the least. See, this bolt is never ending. Okay. Oh, okay, so I'm either going to have to lower it, or it's just going to have to come out with the timing cover. I don't have clearance to get it out like that. Alright, so we're just going to start taking all these up here out. Actually, that one I think can stay. It's not going into anything. Okay, these are like right behind this in my way. So we got this fuel line. We got to get that 8mm loose. Okay, these are right behind this stud here. I may have to see if I can just get them out with a ratchet wrench. Alright, so I'm going to get the ones I can loose. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this out. Now these bolts are different sizes, so I'm going to keep these with this so they're not getting mixed up. All these other bolts are the same length. Don't worry about those. I'm going to see, I could take these out, but I really don't want to. I'm going to see if I can just get these out and get them with my ratchet wrench here. Okay, I probably should just take these out because I'm worried that I'm going to break my little ratchet wrench here. I'm using using this for cheater pipe because these are just crazy tight. I hadn't looked up the torque, but I would say 30 foot-pounds max on these little bolts, maybe 35, but then again, they do like to stick in that aluminum like crazy, so Again, as you can see, I can get it loose, but can't quite get it out of there, so it'll just have to stay there. Now, if you want to remove these studs or remove the one that's in the way, it'd probably actually be a little bit easier, but it takes an E-Torx, so you can get one of those. I'll try like an E8 or something there, and just zip that out. It'll make removing these easier. If these try to hang up on me, I'm probably going to take them out. So don't want any problems. So I think the next thing we're going to get over here with our 8mm. Okay, so we've got that. This one here actually came out. It's wild. This side ain't going to do it. Okay, we're going to get this little fuel line. Always put your bolts and nuts back where they go if you can. Alright. So I'm going to give it a once over. I believe we got everything though, and I'm going to probably start at the bottom with my little putty knife here, working it loose. Okay, as you can see, I'm working up under this bottom with my putty knife. Sometimes I'll take a rubber mallet and kind of hit it, because you're going to have to get it broke loose from that silicone. Basically you have to cut it loose sometimes. It's never easy. Okay, you can see that I've got it going at least. You get started in one area and you just work your way around. This is actually going a little bit easier than I thought it would, but you just keep going, and you got to go around as far as you got to go to get it to come loose. And usually I have to wind up going all the way around the perimeter, and then still it doesn't want to turn loose. But alright, I got my jack in the way, hold on. Okay, so now I'm going to work it back this way. Said you got a locating peg right up here, and they like to stick to those locating pegs too. Just got to take your time, and if it doesn't feel like it wants to come off, then you may want to double check and make sure that there's not something attached, because it's a lot easier to take your time than have to go and start replacing stuff and getting another timing cover. You see how it's cutting that. Okay, I'm going to have to stop right there. That's my locating peg. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to work all the way around the perimeter until we can get this seal broke loose, and then it should come off fairly easy. Okay, when I come up here to start working with the putty knife, I realized I hadn't even took these three 10mm out over here. I thought I'd already got these. So definitely a good idea to double check. I'm going to go ahead and get these. We've got that one, and that one. Okay, there, I got those out. Okay, I missed another 15. There's actually one more that's on the back there on the other side of this. I wanted to get my ratchet stuck here. Okay, there's not a lot of room at this back one here that I'm getting. I'm using my serpentine belt tool. Like I said, these are crazy tight, but I've got a little 3/8 15mm six-sided on there, and I've got that loose, and I've already got the one up top loose. Now there is also, you can look right through here. Let me move this wire. There's an 8mm hiding right there that I seen. I'm gonna have to get up there and get as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish taking these out. But you're gonna need a slim profile, something to get this back one. And I was wondering when I was doing this if it wasn't going to be easier just to take the engine out, and I mean, it's definitely not been easy here. Okay, now this one up here comes out through the top fairly easy. The other one, I got it out as well. It's just that long center one that don't want to come out. But I'm going to get this, and I'm going to get over and get that sneaky 8mm. I really don't see the purpose in that, but you can see if you had a dirty timing cover, and instead I'll, you know, clean this very good before working on it. That's something that you could miss, but you know, if you go to try to pry on it, you need to, you know, check it over real good and make sure if you got any resistance, then stop what you're doing, you know. So there's that one. And I'm going to go over and get that 8mm. And this is the one from the other side, it's a little shorter. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get this little 8mm. So even these little 8s are terribly tight. I think a lot of it is just how the threads lock into the aluminum over time. But it seems like it takes so much torque to break these loose. You know, even a little bitty bolt like this. Okay, so we'll get this out. Okay, so I want to show you your locating peg is there, and then you got another one right up there. You see that? Where all that greasy stuff's at. So just be mindful of that. Now I've got this kind of cut loose with the putty knife down here. I'm going to go up top and see if I can get this to move in any. Okay, you got a spot up here in this front timing cover. You should be able to take a screwdriver and gently start working this loose, and then get your putty knife. This is actually coming pretty easy on this side. You can see I'm just pushing on it, and this thing may just go to flying off of here in a moment, so I'm going to kind of get a hand on it. Okay, you can see with those bolts out, this is coming actually pretty easy. Now it feels like I still got something hung up on this back side over here, so I'm going to go over here and take a look, because this side up here is pretty much just falling loose, so I'm thinking there's still something on this other side. Okay, so it was just hung up on the locating peg, and I went underneath and just tugged on it, and it came loose. Now I'm going to try to figure out how to get this out of here exactly. And I may have to wind up raising or lowering the vehicle. I really don't know. Give me a moment. Okay, basically I had to take the bolts loose on the AC compressor. There is a lower nut on the stud below that. I didn't remove the stud. I just slid it forward as far as I could, and that gave me the slack that I needed to rotate this right through here. And just almost got it out here, and we didn't break it, so that's good. They really don't like you to remove these things, but we'll just get the RTV on the engine surface going back in, and we'll carefully work it into place. So now we can see the water pump down there, and see the way that it's designed there, that it runs up to this weep hole. So it somehow runs up through that passageway when it starts seeping, and it goes right through this right here. So anyways, that's probably all I'm going to do for today, and we'll get back on it tomorrow, start removing the pump. I've got a thing to lock the timing down. I just don't want anything to move. I want to get the pump out without disturbing anything. If we don't disturb anything, then we should be fine. We'll put some marks, and we'll just put the chain. We'll make sure nothing moves. We'll lock down the cams and put it back on. I'm not going to be replacing everything on here. You know, it's up to you. If you want to do that, you can. If you feel like you want to, you know, tackle your timing chain, replace all that while you're in there, you could do that. Okay, and I was checking this chain and stuff, and this thing has really good tension. So I don't see any issue with this chain at all. I put the bolt back down there in, and we've tightened that up. We're going to use that to rotate this clockwise. I wanted to show you these flat spots on here, and we've got a hold down tool. I'll show you that in a minute. It's not necessary to have it, but it does keep it from moving on you, and once we rotate it around, it'll slide into place, and we know that we've got it in the right position. But there are dots on here on the front. I don't think I can show you that one, but we're going to get those at 11 and 1 o'clock, and then the one down on the bottom that you see right there is going to be over at about 4 o'clock. So we're going to go ahead and just start rotating this around until we get the marks where we need them. Okay, I've got a 2-foot extension out here, and I'm watching this through the fender well. You can see that dot. It's like at 12 o'clock right now. We're just going to continue to rotate it. And here's my cam over here on the right side. I'm going to get it over here at 1 o'clock. So we should be getting pretty close about there. Let's take a look at the left side. Okay, and if these aren't lining up where they're supposed to be, then there's definitely going to be a problem somewhere. I'm going to go down here and look at the lower and see if we've got it. And that looks like a little bit too much, so we need to rotate it around again. Okay, it's looking a little better. And then here's our lower mark. Okay, and the other way we're going to check this is when we put our tool on here. If that tool doesn't go on, then it's not in alignment properly. Okay, so here's the tool to hold the cams, and I got this for $23. So it's not necessary. You can line those up and mark them without use of this tool. Okay, before we can slide our tool on there, we got to remove this oil feed tube. We got one on the front and the back. Okay, you're going to take an 8mm, get these 3 Okay, so we'll get this just lifted up and off of here. Okay, so now we can take our tool, doesn't matter which way you flip it, and it should slide right into place. Okay, and that's all the way down as far as it'll go there, and it is sliding on, so now we just got to do the same thing on the back. Okay, so here we are on the back one. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and slide this on. It's not quite seating all the way right here. It's got like maybe an 1/8 or 16-inch gap. This is probably not exactly perfect, but that's close enough. Okay, so I took my 18 on the crank bolt there and turned it just a little bit, and it went ahead and set on down. So now I got it just right. And I was pretty close just by eyeballing it. Okay, now we're going to work on is taking the two 8mm out of this tensioner here. Okay, so we got the top bolt out already. Okay, so I'm just working this last bolt out here. Okay. Just a minute. Okay, so there's that tensioner. You can see it popped on out there. Okay, we got our cam locks in place. Let's see, with this loose, we can get quite a bit more slack here. Okay, and you might want to mark the chain length that lines up with the dot there, if you wish, before you start removing this. But we're going to go ahead. I think we've got enough slack to get the chain, maybe. I think I'm going to have to take the tensioners first though. Okay, so it looks like it's coming. May not be able to slide it out on this right side over here though. Okay. Alright, give me a moment. Okay, I'm just going to start with this right chain guide here. I'm not able to slide the chain out without removing these first. Okay, and we'll just keep these bolts with our tensioner or guide. Alright, so we can slip this side out, I think. Maybe not. Okay, so we'll remove this slide over here, and this one just slides right off. And regardless if I can remove the chain, I've got it enough out of the way that it doesn't matter. Okay, we got two more guides. This one here, as you can see, is not going to get in the way of the pump, the one on the right. No need to remove that. This one on this side is sitting on top of it. So we probably need to go ahead and get that one. I don't know. I could probably get it out even without removing that. I think I'm going to try it first before I take it off, because I'm gonna have to go back up here with a little ratchet wrench or something, because it's kind of hard to get to it. So I'm going to just see if I can get the pump off without even removing that, because there's a little bit of 1/4 inch gap in between the face of the pump and this. And it all comes down to, is there enough room to slide it off of those locating pegs or not? So I'm going to attempt it, and if not, I'll get up there and take this guide loose. Okay, so I've got a drain pan down there, and you note I put some plastic around that, so when the coolant hits it, it's going to go in the drain pan. If there's any winds up in there, it's going to be such a minuscule amount, it's not going to matter. Now if you note, you watch this shaft here, it's actually dripping from this front down onto here, so it did have a little bit of leakage. Luckily it didn't appear to be bad, because when I looked at the oil I didn't really see anything. So it was just fixing to start coming out the front part too. Alright, so we'll just start working these loose. And you already know the gasket's gonna glue itself, or 2 gaskets. So just be cautious, you know, use a little putty knife. Be cautious anytime when removing anything like this. You don't want to damage the surface any. You sure enough will have some leaks. I mean, these seals do a pretty good job. Okay, and I'm getting to that one that's right on the other side of this tensioner. It's kind of hard to see from that angle, but I can get to it. And I'm hoping that I don't have to remove either one of those. You know, less stuff to remove, the better. I got one right down here. I've got 8 of them, I believe. Alright, so we've got them all loose. Okay, and once loose, these appear to be real easy to take out with your fingers. So I'm going to get them all out. It's in no danger of falling off. Okay, and you'll note your locating peg here and right up here. So we're going to see, as soon as we get all these bolts out, if we can get it without taking those other 2 idlers. I know that one's going to clear, but the one over here, I'm all for doing things easier if I can. And I believe this is all of my bolts. There we go. Do a double check. Okay, I got one more over here behind this, and I couldn't even see it from this angle. So get this last one out. Okay, I realized that I couldn't back this one bolt off with this little idler up here in the way, so I'm using this to get up here and remove it. It's no problem. I just couldn't get the bolt down here to back off because the idler was right in the way. So we're going to go ahead and remove that after all. Okay, I didn't take the bolt all the way out of this little idler, but I took it loose far enough where I could get this little bolt out. So I think that's going to be good. So I'm going to start working with this and get my little putty knife over here and see if I can't start breaking this loose. Okay, so I've got a pry bar. I've just got a piece of plastic or something here just so I'm not hitting the face of the engine, and I've got a hold of the gear there, I'm just going to start pushing on that and see if we can't get it broken loose. See the water? It's got to come off of those locating pegs, so it is really holding on. Alright, let's try a little more. Lots of coolant in there. Yeah, get that chain back up out the way. Yeah. See if it's going to come off here. Alright, so I'm going to have to get my tensioner completely out of the way there. It looks like, I guess there's so much of it in there that it can't wiggle out. So let's go ahead and finish removing that. Okay, I stand corrected. I was able to wiggle it this way. It was just stuck on that gasket. And you see, I've got it loose, but the bolt's still in there, so I was able to leave that on. So here's the pump. Okay, as you can see, the plastic worked out really well. We're just going to let this dry out, and we'll start cleaning up this surface a little bit. You're going to have a new O-ring, so as long as it's not, you know, a lot of chunks of stuff sticking up, you know, just clean it up the best you can. The tricky part's going to be cleaning up the timing cover itself and getting all of that old silicone off of there. That's going to take a little bit of doing. Okay, so this is the passageway when it starts leaking. It's going to come through, and it makes its way out to that weep hole on the outside there. See, that in turn comes right out there. And this is the spot when it starts leaking. It makes its way through. Okay, we're going to work on compressing this tensioner, and it was working just fine. What we got to do is, I got a C-clamp on here, but what we got to do is go in here, if I can do this without it falling over, and we got to push up this little pin here. It's like spring load. You got to push that. It's designed where basically this will go out, but it doesn't allow it to push back in unless you push that up with a pin. So we're going to do that. Okay, so I'm holding that back with my little pick tool here, and I'm just slowly compressing it. It's probably going to try to slip off on me before I can do this, but you kind of get the idea. I'm going to have to work on it here a little bit. Okay, I gave up on the C-clamp because it kept slipping off, but what I was able to do is just push it, because it's not that much hard attention. Just push really hard against this surface. You go in there, kick that back, push it all the way down. You get it to right there, and then you should be able to get a tool, and see, I've got this tool in there to hold it. So now when I go to reinstall it, I can bolt it up, something like this, and I can keep my tool in there until I get it bolted up, and then release that tension. So there was nothing wrong with this one, so we can reuse it. Okay, I wanted to show you this real quick. If you wanted another way to verify your crank at top dead center, you can take out this spark plug right here is your #1 cylinder, and I'm just using an ordinary pencil, and I've got a little mark on it, and you just basically, just a pencil with a flat end, go down through the spark plug and set it in place, and you can watch it on this tube here as you just barely rotate it. Don't rotate it a lot as you go to hitting things, but just rotate a little bit, and you can verify the movement of that as it starts coming up to its topmost part. It'll go back down. You want to keep it at the peak, and then you know you're at top dead center. And I even got a mark here, and you know, sure enough, it is at 4 o'clock. You can see that dot and that little gear, and I put a mark right there. So that's just another way to kind of double check things. And so we know these up here right. We got at 11, and we got the dot over here at 1. So, and they're locked in with our hold down, so they're not going anywhere, and we know they're in the right location. So regardless, as long as we get the chain on and we keep it tight on this side, take the slack up with a tensioner, then everything will be good to go. Okay, we got our front cover, timing cover cleaned up here. We just took some purple cleaner and pressure blasted it both sides. It was pretty clean on the front already, but just took a little more degreaser to it. And we just got a big socket. You can just pretty much use anything to knock this out. Alright, so we'll just get another one of those and pound it back in. Now I will say the front time and the crank wasn't leaking, but you know, might as well go ahead and get this while we're at it, because it's pretty easy to get to and pretty cheap. Okay, we got our front crankshaft seal. This is only like $10. There's your part number. Looks just like the old one. The only thing I'm going to be using, I've just got me a hammer here and a little wooden block, and we're just going to tap it in. Okay, now you'll note this has this little lip coming out here. We're not going to be hitting on that part. We're just going to set it down in there, and we're going to kind of run our little block right up on the edge. Just start tapping it in, and then we'll go to the other side. Nothing fancy. Once you get it kind of started, you'll be able to knock it all down. We'll just get it flush with this surface right here. Okay, and you have to kind of hold one side till you get it started. You kind of essentially going to push down on one side with your other fingers. And once you kind of barely get it started, you'll be able to work it around. And if it pops up on you, then you just start over with it. But this is, most of the time I never have anything that fits it perfectly, so this always works out. You just got to get it down flush. I've got it down farther on this side over here. You know, these are meant to fit quite snugly, so notice how I'm not hitting on that lip. And it's not quite solid. I really need something underneath this part, because this is kind of flexing a little bit and giving me some bounce. Let me get something directly under this here. Okay, I got a 2x4 directly under this flange here now, so this will be a little bit more solid. So we'll get a good edge. Yeah, that knocked it down real easy. See, it was wanting to flex because it wasn't solid. All we got to do is get it down flush and it's good to go. I got a little bit more right here. Alright. Before we install the crank pulley, we'll put oil, clean oil on here, and we'll put a little bit on that crank pulley itself too. So we're all done with this for now. Okay, we got our new water pump here. As you see, I'm using a Gates. I use these a lot because I've had good success with them. You know, I probably don't have to point out that you want to definitely use a good water pump, whatever you're doing. This is a lot of work. It's not really something that you want to go cheap on. And here's a comparison. You can see both of them have the locating pegs in the same spot. You can see how flattened out this one. I'm surprised that this seal here wasn't leaking itself. Overall, they look pretty much the same. One thing that I do like about this gasket here is that it sets down in the groove of this pump. Now sometimes you get these little cheap gaskets and they don't want to set there. They're kind of rounded and they fall out. You know, with a job like this, you cannot take the risk of that seal moving out of place. So, you know, in cases of seals like that, I have to take the RTV and, you know, essentially glue it into place before setting on. But this one here sets down in these grooves tight. There's no way it's moving. Don't have to worry about it. So that's really good. I like that in the design. So I got this Gates. I ordered it and it was around $50 with tax and everything. And I'll leave links to where you can find that. Okay, and briefly, I just want to talk about as far as cleaning up the surface of where the pump's going and the timing cover. You can see I got it all cleaned up. We're just using a little blade like this, scrape up the excess adhesive, and then I got one of these. It's a little wire brush. This is not going to hurt the surface of that aluminum any, but it will surprisingly take that old RTV off really effectively. It didn't take me long. Worked around the surface, and then I took alcohol and basically cleaned this several times. Now I do have oil leaking back down on to it, and I'll have to clean it again, but that's just to be expected because there's a lot of oil in here. It's going to drain for a bit, so I'll worry about that when I get to the front cover. But for now, we've got this cleaned up plenty good, and we're going to go ahead and get the pump and set it back in here. Okay, so here we go, and the pump is probably the easiest part of this whole process, and I'm going to work it back in the way that I took it out by sliding it under. And I know it came out of here this way. It should go back. I must not have it just right. Okay. Okay, this bolt over here, basically I just backed it off with my fingers as far as it'd go. I don't think you can get it all the way out with that sprocket there. It's just a very lovely place they put it, but I backed it off as far as it would go, just with my fingers, and we've got room to get it in here now. And I was kind of surprised because the old one came out, but for some reason it didn't want to go back in with the new one. So here we got it. We're going to go ahead and get a bolt in here. I've got a bolt laying somewhere that I've got some Loctite on it. You can see some blue Loctite. Go ahead and just start the first one up here. Now when we go to tighten it, you know, it's not rocket science, but we're going to tighten from the middle basically out, you know, in kind of a crisscross pattern, just like you would do anything else. And all of these little bolts are the same. You don't have to worry about mixing them up. So I'm just going to go ahead and get all 8 of these bolts in. We're going to be putting some medium Loctite on them. And I said, you see me do it. I'm putting this bolt in over here beside this guide, and I did get this underneath this guide without removing it. And I would have really been mad if I'd had to remove that, just because of that one little bolt being under there. I would have had to take that sprocket off and everything and make it more work. But it will go. And I'm getting the final one over here behind this guide in. Okay, so like I said, we're just going to start in the middle. We're going to kind of crisscross, work our way out. And right now I'm just snugging them up. We're going to come back and torque them. Okay, we're going to be torquing these to 89 inch-pounds. If you're not using an inch-pound torque wrench, then you just, the main thing is do not over tighten them, because you're going to wind up stripping your threads. That is the biggest danger of all. So we'll get to 89 and then we quit. And that's plenty tight enough for these little bolts. Oftentimes I'm scared even when tightening them like this again, because sometimes they get over tightened, it seems like, in the factory, and when you go to try to re-torque them in that aluminum, it's like doesn't want to torque. It's already been stripped. So we're just going to zigzag our way across through here. And I would say like no more than 96 on these if you were going to on the max end. Okay, so we'll just go back and double check here. Okay, so we're just retightening this little guide here. Okay, and I would go 89 on this, but I can't get my little torque wrench in here, so I'm just going to be tightening this up with this little bitty ratchet wrench. As long as I don't overdo it, it's going to be fine. It won't move. Okay, so I'm just setting this chain back on here. I really don't care about what plated links or where, because as long as we got this in time, that's what matters. I'm just getting everything set back on here. Okay, so I've just set it on there. We've double checked to make sure the chain setting down in the sprockets, even on the pump. And we're going to make sure that we take up the slack on this left side where the tensioner is. So just double checking things, making sure that everything's where it should be, making sure that we've got everything sitting in the teeth of the sprockets. And I went ahead and I put the little plated link down there on the dot. I'll show you that. But you know, basically we'll get the tensioner on, and we'll check it, and if it's not in alignment, we'll redo it. But you know, hopefully we can get this on the first go. We're going to rotate and we're going to make sure everything's right. You know, it's just way too much work to get in a big hurry at this point, so we want to make sure everything's right before we proceed on. And you are able to slip this chain in without removing all this other stuff. You know, you just slip it in there, same way on this side. It will slip in. See, there is that little plated link on the dot down here, and this is down here is lined up. It's not been moved. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to get the tensioner over here, and we're going to set it back in place here, and we'll pull our pin and we'll just check it out. I know how to compress it now. I can do it with it in the vehicle. I wasn't for sure how to compress it the first time. Okay, this tensioner on this side, you know, it has this lip or L. If you have to pop the timing chain off there momentarily, it's not a big deal. Just set it underneath. And I'm also putting a little Loctite on these. Going to tighten these to 89 inch-pounds as well. Alright, this one over here is easy enough. We're going to make sure we've got our chain where it needs to be. And we're just going to kind of wiggle it into place here. It will go eventually. Okay. It's just a snug. There we go. And that just slips right on there. Okay, and I wanted to point something out so you don't panic. This side here has a little bit of slack, but in order to fit in these teeth properly, it's going to have that little bit of slack. Now, I'm assuming once I get the tensioner on and crank it around, it's going to tighten this side up. That's just how it is at the moment. So it's got just a little bit of slack, but you wouldn't be able to move it back another tooth on those sprockets. It's just impossible. You'd have to move it another length. So it is where it needs to be. Alright, we're going to go ahead and set this down here. And this little thing fits, this round part fits in a rounded indention on that tensioner there. Hopefully this is not going to give me any problems. I may in fact have to take this back off though if I can't get this to line up. We're just going to see what it's going to do here for a moment. Okay, so you notice I put a little Allen wrench in there. My pick tool fell right out just before I could even start tightening those, and I had to get something that's a little bit tighter, so I put a little Allen wrench in there, and that's actually staying. So that was fun. Another thing I did is I cranked this turn the crank just a little bit. It gave me enough slack that I can get these to go in here. I've got plenty of slack here now, no problem. So I'm just tightening those up. Okay, so we go ahead and snugging these on down. Said I had thought about taking the engine completely out, and I don't know that if I was to do this again, I probably would. Just take the engine and transmission out. It's just I really hate working in this cramped up space here, and it's just another step or two just to pop the whole engine and everything out of here. So I'm just going to finish running this on down, and I'm going to get the torque wrench over here. We're going to torque this to 89 inch-pounds as well. I did put some Loctite on here. Okay, so we got our inch-pound. We'll get the lower one. All right. Okay, so we know these up here are in the position. Okay, and we got this down here in a position, so we're getting ready to pull the pin here, and we're going to crank it around and just check it and see how it looks. If it doesn't look good, then we're going to push the tensioner back and we'll redo it and try it again. Okay, we'll go ahead and get our stops. I may have to rotate this slightly. It's kind of locked in there. You can take a crescent on this hex right here and move it a little bit and get it to break loose as well. Okay, I did not get it on the first go. You could avoid all this trouble I'm having simply by paint marking your chain and your sprocket where it comes off. And the same thing for that lower one. I should have done that, and you can avoid all this. But I must have had slack because when I rotated it, I was a little bit off, and I could tell by verifying if these would go on like they did previous, and they would not. So basically I could not push that tension out. Had to take it plumb off to be able to compress it properly. So I took it off. I got a makeshift tensioner with a bungee cord, and I've rotated this thing several times to ensure that I am in alignment now before putting that back on, and these are going on fine, and we're lined up down here. So I'm gonna repop the tensioner, and I'm gonna check it some more times, several more times, just to make absolutely sure, and then we'll proceed on. Okay, before I move on, a pointer I would like to mention here. When I started off with this, I think the whole problem was I had slack over here. Now what I did this time when I had slack was I took this and rotated the crank back just one tooth, got the chain on, and took the slack up, and that worked out perfectly, popping the tensioner. So I'm thinking that was the whole problem, because I've rotated it several times. Everything is lining up perfectly now. But like I said, if you mark your sprockets and your chain up here on these paint marks, make sure they don't come off, and down there, there's no way you can get it wrong. Just put it right back on your paint marks. Okay, I've stuffed some rag, paper towel in there. That's where the majority of the oil kept dripping. This has been dripping for like at least 2 days, and there's no sign of it stopping. So I don't want that getting into my RTV, so I loosely just kind of pack those in there, just kind of stop some of that. Now I went over this surface twice with rag and alcohol, and what I'm going to be doing is actually applying it to the engine. I know it's going to be harder, but I'm not confident that I could get this piece in here without smearing it and getting RTV everywhere, so that's how I'm going to be doing it. And we got that cleaned up really well. Same thing here, took alcohol, wiped this really good. And you know, Mainly what I'm going to do is when I'm applying it to the engine side, I'm going to pay attention to these spots here as well. And I'm going to apply that RTV there. But it's a little bit more difficult than putting it on this, but there's no way I'm getting it in there without making a big mess. So I'm going to apply it to that side, and that's how I always do it. If you're got a steady hand, can get it in there, then putting it on this will definitely be easier. Okay, so we got everything ready to go. So it's cleaned up. We're going to be using this ultra black. I'm going to be using some medium thread locker. Got me a couple bolts here ready to go. We're going to start applying it to that engine side there, and then we're going to work on slipping that up into place. Okay, and I'm going to probably select about this size right here. Okay, we're getting ready to set this in place, and you can see it ain't nothing pretty. But the hardest part was back there behind that back part. I had to kind of feel and look, and it's kind of difficult. But I got all the little holes, so we're going to go ahead and get the piece set in here. Alright, so let's see if I can remember how. Alright, so we got to get it set and get it still, so we're not messing up our RTV here. Okay, so we don't quite have it. Okay, so I'm just working it on my alignment pegs. I'm going to go ahead and get a couple bolts started here. Okay, and as I said, I'm putting medium Loctite. I'm just working the ones on this outer perimeter here first. Right now we're just going to start working these longer bolts back in, and we'll get some. And I'm just going to be finger tightening these, and I'll come back and just going to barely snug them up with it. We're not going to be torquing them or anything until we've allowed it time to set up. So get the rest of these in. We've got our big bolts that are going to be going in the center there. Once we have our smaller perimeter and ones in the center. Okay, all the bolts are in our perimeters. Got them in the center. Now they're just finger tight, but I've got them all the way down. You can still see the RTV squishing out. And that's what we want, but we don't want to squish it all out. So we're going to let it set up for 24 hours and come back and torque it. But I'm going to go ahead now and get these center bolts. We have these labeled as to where they go, and the only purpose I've seen for this one is a good little bolt to miss and possibly break your timing cover. Yeah, we're just starting with this little 8mm, and it says Loctite on it, just like everything else. Okay, here we go with this 15 over here. This is the shorter of the three. Go ahead, and I'm just going to run that down with my fingers all the way. or if I can't get it run down that far, I'll get a ratchet, just barely run it down. Okay, and there we have that one. And this one I actually overlooked, so I think what we're going to do is lower this down to get this one in, but I'm going to go ahead and put the one over here to the right. Okay, we got the last bolt here. All I did was simply lower the engine, put the jack under there, took a block out or two. So I'm going to go ahead and get this one run down with my fingers, and I think we're going to call it a day. It's about all we can really do for now. We're just going to let this set up for a day, and then we'll come back and torque them down. Okay, so I do have one more thing I want to put on, is that's this little oil feed. I'm probably going to snug these down to about 89 inch-pounds. I hope these little bolts can handle it. Alright, we'll just put that one on the back. Okay, so I'm back here today getting ready to start torquing these down. We're going to go 35 on these big 15s here. I lifted the engine just slightly, not too much. You don't want to overextend the CVs. And I'm going to get this top one, and then I'm going to go ahead and lower it down and see if I can't get those other ones. If I can't get to it with the torque wrench, I'm just going to snug it up real good. Okay, so 35 foot-pounds. Okay, we've got the center one here. I've lowered it. Okay, so here we are back here getting this rear one. And then the only one we have in the middle, as far as these that aren't on the perimeter, is the 8mm. We're going to go inch-pounds on that one, 89 inch-pounds. Okay, so we got our inch-pound right up here, getting this 8mm. So I'm going 89 inch-pounds. Okay, we got our foot-pounds set to 15. We're going to start tightening these on the perimeter. And we're going to go from side to side, starting about in the middle here, and just zigzagging, working our way down and up. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start in about the middle. We got it set to 15. And we're just going to kind of work our way from side to side here. Okay, now we're switching back over to this side, and we'll just kind of do this all the way down, and then we'll go back up to the top. And we'll kind of zigzag our way back up to the top, and then we'll work our way to those center most. But 15 foot-pounds is plenty. You know, a lot of people don't like to leave the RTV setting for so long, but I do. And I've never had any leaks to worry about doing it this way, but I have had leaks when I tightened it up prematurely, so this is just how I do it. Right, and you kind of get the idea. So we're going to go up top and zigzag back and forth. And you can see this stuff will still squish a little bit, but it will seal a lot better after it cures some. Okay, now we just got these up here left. We're just going to do the same thing, just zigzag. Just work our way up to the top, and then we'll have all of the timing cover torqued down. And I did put some Loctite on these as well. Alright, we're going to go 15 foot-pounds on this here as well. Okay, we're going to put this 8mm back in, tighten this to 89 inch-pounds. Okay, so getting ready to put this crank pulley back on. I've got my little marks there that I'm gonna line it back up with. Now you can pull it on here with a big bolt, but a lot of times I will get it started with my rubber mallet first. Okay, I got my rubber mallet. I got an aluminum bar here. And once we make sure it's lined up, I'm just going to tap it down until I can get the bolt threaded in, at least about 2 good threads or more. Okay, so they said the other way where you won't have to tap it down is if you have a bolt with these exact threads. I couldn't really tell you what it is right off the hand, but it has to be the exact thread. You sure don't want to ruin your crank by making any mistake like that. But we've got it where we can thread it down enough. We got some Loctite on there, and it's not hard to tap on either, especially if you got like a little piece of 2x4, like I've got a little aluminum bar or something. So we'll just go ahead and thread this down, tighten this down all the way. Now when I get it down here, I'm going to be using my impact. That's what I usually always use. You could torque it if you like, but I'll just hit it a little bit with the impact. It never comes loose. And I know they say you're not supposed to reuse them, but you can. I seriously doubt one of these would ever come off. Alright, so we're just going to finish snugging it down. Okay, and I think I mentioned this before, make absolutely sure that you oil the outside of this crank pulley and the inner part of that seal. You see how the oil is dripping down right here. So I know if you don't put oil in there, it's going to burn it up in no time. So we're going to hit it with the impact, just make sure that it's nice and tight. Okay, we got the crank pulley on. We're going to go ahead and work on getting this tensioner here next. We got a little medium Loctite. going to go 89 inch-pounds. Okay, we're going to slip this AC compressor back in place here, and we got a couple locating, or we got one locating peg. I'm going to tighten this studded bolt here, and then we got the nut right down there we need to get on. Right, I'm going to tighten these to about 20 foot-pounds. Right, and we'll just get to this bottom one here the best you can. We'll just snug this up with a ratchet wrench. If you take and tap this sleeve right here down a little bit, it'll make sliding it back on easier, because when you tighten that bolt, it tightens that up. So we're going to go ahead, slip this in here. And you see it's slipping on there, no problem. And we got to get it on the stud up here. We're going to torque these to 35 foot-pounds. Okay, we're going to go ahead and refasten this. Let's try this again. Okay, just getting ready to slip this belt on, pull this tension back. And then we'll just double check, make sure it's on properly. Okay, we're about to put our mount back in here, and then we can take the blocks supporting the engine out. Right, we're going to Loctite these. We'll snug these 15s down. Now I've left the 18s loose. What I like to do is line them back up with their bolt marks to make sure that the engine's back in the same position it was in. Put a little Loctite on the smaller one. We're going to go 35 foot-pounds on the 15. Got 20 foot-pounds on these. You see the old bolt marks. It's easy to slide this engine to get those to line up. I'm just going to make sure it's over that same bolt mark. Okay, we're going to go 65 foot-pounds on these big bolts. Okay, so this passenger mount is on and we got the block supporting the engine out from under there. Okay, so because I'm still waiting on my valve cover gaskets to come in, I'm just going to go ahead and start putting everything back together, even though it makes it more difficult. But got nothing else to do, so we're going to just go ahead and start setting this back on. We've got the 2 bolts going on each side and the one up here. Now I've just kind of got the 1 bolt up there for now and left these out. That way we can have plenty of room to set the new radiator in here and not be banging it up. Now if I have limited clearance, I will put cardboard on them, you know, because it's just so easy to damage those fins. Okay, I've got my new radiator here. Now there were a couple of minor differences. For example, on this one there was a spout coming off here. I had to plug that off. You can get these at the parts store, little rubber plugs, and we clamped that off. And the spout on the old one was over here and nothing was over here, so this on this side is where they put the spout on this one. So that's the only difference that I could tell. And this one, that feels a little bit thicker and more heavy duty of a radiator than the old one. Now we're going to go ahead and transfer our fan over here and the bolts that we need. This is the old one. So it's much thinner than that one, so hopefully that'll be a better radiator. And you can see the spout over here. So that you know, everything else matched up when I was ordering it, and you want to make absolutely sure they match. But I did not notice that spout there. Not sure, you know, it probably goes on different models and stuff. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and we're going to transfer. We're going to get the fan over, go ahead and put it on, get it bolted down, and we'll go ahead and transfer that hose. I'm debating on whether I want to put a screw clamp on there, because I really hate when you disturb one of these hoses and it starts leaking, so I'm not for sure on that. Okay, so we're just going ahead and getting these screws in, these 8mm. And you can see it's fitting on there, lining up good, slides down onto these. Okay, and one thing I like about this radiator, it already has all these clip fasteners on both sides, even for the condenser. You can see right here. Sometimes you have to transfer those from your old radiator. Right, so we put our hose right back in place, basically lining up the letters with this notch here. So we're going to go ahead and slip it back in here. Okay, we'll just slip our little legs of our radiator right back down in those on each side, and you can see we got plenty of room here. Okay, so just carefully start setting it down. We don't want to mess our fins up. Okay, it's set in place nicely. So note, this one is fastened, this is loose to give us extra room. So all we got to do is slip these back up on to the place right there on each side. Slips right into that, and then we'll tighten our screws back at the top there. Okay, so run into a problem with this radiator. The little feet here that set into these rubber grommets is an inch wider, so it wouldn't seat in here, so I just took the rubber grommets out and just set it down in here and just kind of stuck them up under here. I mean, really, with it setting, it's setting on plastic, it's not going to be a problem, but I'm just going to kind of zip tie that rubber grommet there, and at least it's setting down in these now. But don't really know what's going on, but everything else is matching up fine. But I'm thinking the compatibility had to be different on this radiator. Okay, so we got it set back in there. Got our bolt there, that's lining up good, so everything else is looking good. Okay, this little piece goes up on the top. Now the one that was on the driver's side's broken, so I won't be able to put that one back on. It was broken in a couple pieces. Okay, we'll go ahead and tighten these top 13mm on each side here. Okay, and I'm putting a little Loctite on here. Just going to get these on both sides. Okay, one of the first thing, I stuck my switch back on here. And this cable got running back down through there. Okay, so just fed the cable back through there. Okay, so we're just going to slip this back into place. We took those 8mm back out. We got to pull this. Now we'll go ahead and just reattach the hood latch. And we may need to adjust this once we get it all back together. Okay, we're going to go ahead and reattach the fan. Now it's up to you on how many of these clips you want to reconnect, but the more, they're really kind of overdone it in my opinion. Okay, so I'm just snapping that in. Okay, now we're getting the one on this side. Like I said, you only need a fraction of these clips to hold this. You know, if you do have to work on this again, you won't have to take every single one of them out because you don't need that many to hold it in place. So it's up to you. If you want to attach them all, feel free to do so, but it's a little bit overkill. Right, we're going to slip these hoses back on. You see the arrow tells you which one goes where. There, we'll get those clamps back up there. Okay, so we got our clamps back on. Okay, I'm going to get this windshield washer tank set back in place. Alright, we got the 11mm nut. Okay, now for the lower. Okay, so this hose is going to reclip up here. And then we're just going to make the connection right here. Okay, so we're just getting ready to set this metal piece back on. We're going to tighten these to 35 foot-pounds on each side. Some of these may be stripped. I may not be able to get it to 35. Okay, this thing's probably not worth putting back, but go ahead and see if we can fasten what's left of this thing. Alright, I want to start putting the headlight assembly back in. This is a 13mm. In the front we got a locating peg right there. Okay, we'll snug these all down. Okay, I had this broken piece here on completely wrong. It was upside down and turned the wrong way, but it's kind of hard to tell when something's broken all to pieces. But we do have it on there correctly now. It should look something like that. And this is supposed to be on the bumper. However, it was broken off the bumper, so I was putting it on first. And we're going to go ahead, slip the bumper back on. We got one connection right here to make. We can easily do that with the bumper in place. So we'll go ahead and get the bumper over here. Okay, so here we are, ready to just go ahead and set this up and on here. Right, so I'm going to try to pull this over here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and make this connection. Okay. Okay, so we got all those tight. Okay, I'm getting ready to just go ahead and put these little fender liners back in. Just setting them back up here. We got the screws over here, and then we've got these other little push pins. Now you want to get yourself one of these kits. You're all but certain to break or lose some of these, and I'll leave a link. Okay, that's the wrong size. These are the little 5.5 millimeters. Got this little 8mm bolt over here. Okay, and before I forget this upper part, we have a couple of these. Now the headlight spot was actually broken down here. We got that one's missing. We've got a few places. And this one here. And I think we're ready to go ahead. I've got those inner fender flaps on. besides putting a push pin on the underneath part of this, we've got everything. We're going to go ahead and just get the wheels back on each side. We'll torque these down to 100 foot-pounds once we get the weight on the vehicle. Right, so we got our 19 millimeter. Snug these down for now. Okay, finally got my valve cover gaskets in here today. And you'll note we got some of these little seals here, and these are really fun to remove and put back. Now, I hadn't seen them leaking at all, but we'll go ahead and do them. So we got the ones for the variable solenoids and then just the spark plug tube. So we're going to go ahead and get those old ones out. Got a 30 millimeter socket, my rubber mallet. There's the old one, and they're made a little bit different, I will say. So if you don't want to replace these, mess with all this, it's probably not necessary. Okay, so there's those three out. And now I've got a 24. So you got that one. Okay, like I said, you are warned, these things are a pain in the rear to put in. It takes a lot of force to push them or hit them and get them down flush. And in my experience, I've never seen these leaking, only the outer seal, so don't even know that it's worth it. Okay, make sure that this bevel is going just like this, so that part has to face up. I started that one wrong, so I flipped it over. Now these I found easier to push in. You simply could not knock these in, they just bounce right back out. So if these things ain't leaking, I would not even attempt to mess with them. They're so difficult, it's not even worth it. It's like these aftermarkets just don't want to fit. I want to push that down a little more, get that one in. Okay, we're going to brush a little of this on the insides of these because they are a royal pain to slip on once you get them up there. And that'll just help out a little bit. Okay, so we got okay, I had the wrong gasket. So yeah, the tapered in going down. The ones that were on there wasn't leaking, but you could definitely, you know, tell they were old. They were, once you disturb them, they'll start leaking. More especially when you got to pry them off there because they glue themselves. There's just no way of not damaging them. But I ordered these. They were quite a bit cheaper. They were like $60 at the parts store, so I just ordered some. They were like 20 bucks. So sometimes you just save money where you can. Alright, so we'll get the other one on. Okay, now when you put this on, you'll have to be cautious. Now, sometimes I will take the RTV and put it in place, tack it in place before putting them on, because these are not real tight. So we're going to be cautious and make sure it's not falling down as we're setting it into place. because that can happen, and you can basically cut the valve cover gasket in half, not even know it when you go to tighten it down. Okay, I've wiped this surface up, but the main areas I'm worried about is this junction of the front timing cover, and we're going to put a little bit of RTV there and then a little bit down here. So that's just the rule of thumb anytime you have a junction. So let's go ahead and get it set on here. Okay, like I said, we're going to be very cautious. We're going to make sure this seal stays in place as we're setting it. And try to get it set straight down without moving it a whole lot. Alright, so let's go ahead and start snugging all of our perimeter bolts down. And you can also take a look around the perimeter and make sure that the gasket is where it's supposed to be. I'm just starting in the middle. I'm going to just go from here to here, here, back over to here, and then we'll just kind of work our way out. Just running it down with my fingers first. We're going to torque these to about 89 inch-pounds. Alright, we're going to start the center, just start tightening these to 89 inch-pounds, and then we'll move on to the rear. Okay, so again, we're going to be careful, making sure that our gasket stays in place. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and start tightening these up. Okay, we'll just go ahead and start torquing these to 89 inch-pounds in the same manner. And then we just got to get all of our wires, get our PCV back in there in just a second. I don't know if I talked about, I did already put the RTV at the junction spots back there as well. And I'll probably just run back around this one more time just to kind of double check it. Okay, so we got a lot of wires. We'll start slipping these back on to the studs. We got this clips in here. Okay, we got a couple of wires down here we disconnected. For our cams. I'll go ahead and reattach these. And we got this one going right here. Okay, so I just connected that O2 sensor back down there. I couldn't even show you if I wanted to. These just gonna go back to their spots, white to white, black to black. Push the little purple pin back down, and we're gonna go ahead and get our injectors, and we'll get our coil packs over here. But these are all self-explanatory. They go right back. Push straight down and push your locks. A little bit quicker, a lot of times going back together. And I do need to get that Pcv valve before I mess around and forget that. I'm going to go ahead and get the bolts. Okay, so our Pcv valve is good. We can shake it and hear it rattling. I want to get this off here a minute. Okay, everything's looking pretty good back here. We got this connection here to make. Okay, so now we're working on the front one, just getting the harness back up here. Start pushing these. Okay. So we got our injectors. Now we've got a couple of grounds. Remember to go up over here. Get this fastened to our solenoids. Push those locks back down. Okay, we've got to set these into place. Okay, we're going to get this ground. Just tighten up this 8mm here. Okay, I'm just slipping this ground. This little plastic piece will snap back in there. We'll get this 8mm back in place. Snug it up. Okay, I'm over here working. I'm just slipping these back on the studs. We'll pop this down here. Now this runs down through here and clips and goes to this oil sensor, and I'm fixing to be going down there and plugging that in. It's kind of right down there behind the alternator, almost impossible to see. Alright, it feels like we might be making some progress. We're gonna get this, and remember we got a screw that goes into the back there. Okay, we'll tighten these to 89 inch-pounds as well. We're going to get all these in, and we'll go back there and see if we can get our screw in that brace, the one that's hidden in the back, all sneaky like. Okay, we'll go ahead and start connecting this here. Okay, I was just going up in there and tightening that little 8mm. Now we'll get the rest of these snugged down. Okay, we're just going to tighten these to 89. Starting in the middle. We had a couple vacuums in the back. One on the back of the intake. Snap that back on. Got this one right here. We'll get those clamps on there. Okay, we're going to get this overflow tank back in here. And it's got a little notch on the back where it slips into, and I need to get my old screws off here. Okay, so we got it in the notch. Go ahead and get these screws back in place here. Snug those up. It helps to use an extension to get in here. Okay, we'll reclip our Freon tube here. Okay, this down here is pretty easy. We're just going to line up the clips with the notch. Push it on all the way. Okay, we're going to go ahead and set the air box. We'll reconnect this wire. Go ahead and tighten up this band. Snap that back on. Okay, we got a couple bolts. Okay, we got this tube. Okay, most importantly, we've completely drained out all the old oil in case there's any contamination or coolant in there. And I've let it set for like a day just with the plug out. Okay, I got a new oil filter. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get oil back in here. It takes 6 quarts. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and get coolant back in it. Now the system's it's a little over 3 gallons, so we're going to get about 1.5 gallons concentrate, and then we'll put the rest water to see how it goes. Okay, so here we go. Just starting off with the concentrate. lot of air in it. Okay, so I think so far I've got like maybe 2 gallons in here. That's about what I figured. But either way, if you put just half and half, it's going to mix out right. I'm putting like half a gallon of concentrate and then a half gallon distilled water, and you just keep doing that. But supposedly it's supposed to be about 3 gallons or so altogether, the whole system. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and crank it up and see how it's going to do. Okay, I'm going to reattach the negative. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and crank it up. We'll just start working some of the air out, checking for leaks and everything here. And some burn off is to be expected because you got to remember all the work you did on it. Oil's running down onto the exhaust and on the engine, so it's going to take a little bit for all that to burn off, so just don't panic when you start smelling smoke and stuff. We're going to go ahead and tighten these lugs to 100 foot-pounds in a star pattern, and we're going to go ahead and take it down the road. So far, no leaks. So that's good. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video. We've took it, we drove it around, checked it for leaks really good. I've been crawling under there, no leaks. Everything's looking good. It's got a check engine light for the catalyst. Other than that, everything's looking really good. Okay, so I've been working on this on and off for the past week. However, I've probably only spent about 3 full days on it, and said I hadn't been in a big hurry. It's been 100 degrees in the shade the past week. But a lot of the time was waiting on parts because, you know, if you got time and can afford the ability to wait on the parts, you can save some money. So anyways, hope you found the video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to leave a comment, please do so. As always, I invite you to subscribe, and I thank you for watching.